Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic interview show. This is episode 619. We've got a real friend of the show, a regular member of the WP-Tonic Friday panel show. We got Spencer Forman with me. Spencer is the founder and CEO of WP-Launchify, and also the great plugin LaunchFlows. That's a sponsor of the show. We're going to be talking about secrets of the WordPress stack. That sounds interesting. But I'm going to let my co-host, I'm going to quickly let Spencer introduce himself very quickly, and then we're going to go into this interview. So first of all, Stephen, you have returned from doing a lot of work. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, Stephen Souter. It's good to be back from zipfish.io. Was on a 2-week family vacation, so trying to do work and vacation at the same time was challenging. So it's good to be back home and in the saddle, so to speak.
It's more relaxing being back at work, isn't it?
Almost.
Yeah, almost. And obviously the only Spencer Forman. Can you, Forman, I don't know. I'll get mixed up.
Close enough.
Yeah.
I just want to say I'm glad to finally meet you in person, Jonathan. I've heard a lot about you, and Stephen as well. It's nice to meet you and finally be on the show. So after all these years,
you've been on here multiple times. What the hell? What the hell are you?
7 and 9.
What the hell are you talking about?
I'm goofing on you. By the way, I want to just call out to our good friend Heather Renzi, because I think this is going to be my new way to show up. Hello, Spencer Forman. Stephen may not have seen that show, but Heather made it a dramatic and a very powerful impression on the audience last week with her.
Oh, she always makes the impression of me.
That's awesome.
Yum, yum. That's all I've got to say. We descended into mayhem before we even start. Before we go into the main part of the interview, I want to talk about one of our major sponsor. That's Castos. If you're looking to get into podcasting, and you really should do, it's just a great way of building your own personal brand and also meeting really interesting people. Or you've got clients that are interested into getting into podcasting, you really want to look at Castos. They've got a flat rate pricing structure, so you're not penalized by success. It's really very cheap and reasonable what they are asking. They're WordPress people. Matt Medeiros, the great podcaster himself from the Matt Report, is the head of sales and customer experience. So they're embedded in the WordPress community. Really just go over to their website. You'll find all the links all over the WP-Tonic website. Go and have a look what they got offer. If you do decide to buy for yourself or for clients, please tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic website. It really helps them and us. So Spencer, where to begin? So you got this title, The Secrets of the WordPress Stack, and obviously you got your consultancy business, WP-Launchify. Tell us more, Spencer.
Well, to not sound too mysterious or provocative, let me set this up by saying...
Oh, never.
I know, right? Have you met me before? Let me start out by saying that we all owe a debt of gratitude to the existence of WordPress. And of course, you know, Matt single-handedly bringing this about through his own efforts in the early days has created what is, I think, singularly now the only platform of this magnitude. I mean, really 40-50% of all CMS market, where it's an open source environment. I mean, if you think about it, there's really nothing else. There was Linux at one time, but I don't think, with the exception of maybe Magento, but I think Magento is now sort of fizzled away in some respects. There was never really anything, or isn't anything today, that compares with an organic granola open source community that has built something that is essentially powering nearly half of the internet as far as the underlying, you know, framework and so forth. So if we start with that premise, the thing that we've all been discussing is that it fosters an environment where virtually anybody can rise to be a superstar. and you can create a product from nowhere. And we've seen some real call out products in the last year. In fact, I'll just pick on one because there's others that I've said a million times. But for example, Fluent CRM, Shah Jahan Jewel and his team came out of the blue. Maybe they heard us talking about it and otherwise, but like came up with a plugin based CRM, which was the only real plugin in the space other than there's Groundhog and Adrian Toby, of course. And then there was one that was called something that got absorbed by and killed. It was called No BS, Zero BS.
Yeah, really bizarre.
It got absorbed
name.
by Automatic,
Bizarre,
right?
A bizarre name.
I don't know if it'll ever rise to the surface, but my feeling is it's dead and buried, and they hid the remains. So what you've got is a scenario where these plugins can come out of nowhere, solve a problem, and now you've got an audience in the tens or hundreds of millions. I don't think it's hundreds, but like tens or maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions. Some plugins have 5-10 million users, like a WooCommerce. And I think what's so exciting about that is how accessible all the code is, how the relationships are. But here's the corollary to that, or I would say here's the flip side of that. We've got a scenario where the hippie granola like ability to get anything anytime you want gives people those two big problems: shiny ball syndrome or building Frankenstein monsters. And wrapped around that is a sort of seesaw of balancing interests. On the one hand is Automatic, funded by VCs who want to commercialize the thing that's been created for their reasons, of course. On the other side are all of us makers who want to commercialize our products. And now we've got this consolidation of the customer saying, this is all too confusing, gang. Like 265,000 choices is not what happens when I go over to Shopify or Wix or Weebly or Squarespace or even ClickFunnels. And so the secret of the WordPress stack, which is where my mission has been focused for the last year, but it's grown out of 15 plus years, is how to show people, starting for free, that WordPress really is a platform, and it really has a couple key plugins that will be the foundation of anybody's solution. And then when you're established with that, having an association, which is something else I'm working on, of the makers who can come up into the organization, just like with these little doodads here. Before these little USB sticks existed, there was 80 million ways to connect electronics. Now all the makers of electronics said, we're going to agree to use this standard, and now all of our stuff works together. So my focus this year and going forward is going to be on helping to educate people for free which plugins they need to have an instant satisfaction solution on the most powerful platform in the world, that they will own and control for themselves or their clients, but that they will also be able to get unified agreement of opinion by the makers, who will be organizing under something that I'm going to be announcing soon, I hope, to act as an association that counterbalances or offers at least an alternative to what maybe Automatic is saying. And this is not designed to say there's anything wrong with what Automatic and Jetpack are doing. That's awesome. And they'll be working with, the hosts and the other partners they have. But us makers don't necessarily have to have that as our only option. We create our own content. We create our own products. We can work together, and we can do it for the benevolent benefit of all of the end users. Because let's be honest, all three of us work in the space, and most of the listeners work in the space of satisfying customers. How much time have any of us spent in the last year, 2 years, 5 years, explaining why there's 7 different choices of page builders, or why there's 10 different problems with things colliding? And so that's where the secret lies. The secret lies in we are on the cusp of a benevolent, peaceful, beneficial revolution for everybody in WordPress, where it evolves from a sort of random granola party into something that is very, very simple to understand, even for somebody coming in from the outside world.
Thanks for that. Over to you, Stephen.
Great commentary, Jonathan.
I'm glad you just gave us the secret to cold fusion. Over to you, Stephen.
Quick
You
definition.
never like what I've got to say anyway, so I thought I'd just throw it over to Stephen.
This is like having your ex-wife on the show.
What I think would be helpful is a definition around the term you used. You said granola. What do you mean by granola?
Well, in other words, we've got a community, and I was a participant of this. When I first started in WordPress, it was around 2006, I think, right near the beginning. I think it maybe officially was forked around 2004 or 5, but like in 6 was when it was like an actual, you could use it. There was like a handful of us sitting around a campfire, as I recall. I mean, legitimately, it was in the tens or hundreds, maybe low thousands. So it was like somebody had like a Grateful Dead listening party in their backyard and said, bring something to eat and drink. And that attitude has been the basis, in my opinion, of the appeal of WordPress. And it's been something that up until recently was carried off very well by Automatic and Matt and so forth. But I think even everybody, this isn't poking anything at anybody, even the most logical person realizes you can't have a backyard picnic with 50% of the internet all bringing random things to the party. It just doesn't work anymore. That's my point. At some point, we all have to accept and look at the money being thrown around this year. There are real companies with real money having real financial incentives to organize and consolidate and team up and do things with this, because it's no longer a picnic or a, hey man, that sounds good, I'll trade you this thing for that thing. And
I do agree with you, because at the present moment, the situation, obviously, the founder or the joint founder, I think Little's contribution to the start of WordPress have been diminished, but at the present moment it's Automatic and the hosting companies, they also seem to have a lot of influence behind the scenes, but it's the plugin, it's the service side and the plugin producers, to me, that have been one of the main contributors to the building and the popularity of WordPress, not the hosting providers. What's your comment about that? And then we can go for our break, Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, see, here's the thing. I also want to set the tone of this conversation, because while I'm willing to be, and often am on the WP-Tonic show, provocative and so forth, and poking my thumb at other people who are poking this direction.
That is the purpose of the Friday show.
But this is not in that tone, okay? And here's why this is important, I feel, to clarify. We are all blessed for the benefit of what has developed over time. And it's undeniable, like peanut butter and chocolate. They go together, and you couldn't have had WordPress forking and working without the contribution of both the people on Automatic side and Matt, as well as all the makers. This is the thing that has worked. This magic has worked. And I've been lucky to be here and witnessed it and had my own flavor of involvement. However, I don't think that that's the conversation, because there is more than enough to go around. Okay. Yeah. The issue that we're talking about is that as we sit here today, there's, let's call it a reasonable level of objective frustration or objective potential. If you've got a company working in the way they are with the venture side of things, we don't have to say it's good, bad, otherwise, but they've got their agenda, they got their resources. What I am saying is we don't have to beg their permission or ask for their blessing to go ahead and use the same open source stuff to achieve our own goals. And I have no interest in being political or saying good, bad, or otherwise, but I am interested in saying, wouldn't it benefit the end users on both sides if there was clarity of purpose of what WordPress really is and does, because somebody finally organized it amongst the makers themselves? Because even Automatic would benefit in that regard, wouldn't it? I mean,
yeah, you not political. Let's find the folder of C and DC's letters I've received.
Well, the thing, this is why I bring this up, Jonathan.
They're over here, the folder of the
letters. Here's where I'll bring it. I'll bring the rubber to the road. Okay. In the past, we all know the stories of when a particular maker or a particular business decided to challenge the status quo of the top down. Okay. They were objectively squashed or penalized or disappeared. It was very much like a dramatic, like a Sopranos episode. Think of it this way. The reality of what we have now is such that those of us who make stuff can go about our business without offending or pointing fingers or comparing badly to the king or the boss, because it's irrelevant now. In other words, in a small community with small market where nobody knows how to monetize, that's one thing. There's plenty to go around. The issue, though, is objectively, by being respectful, those of us on the maker side who will organize around this particular thing will actually afford each other protection.
Yeah.
And will afford each
totally
other protection.
understand. And I have no plans to go into my comments in this interview, so that's fine.
Oh, okay.
We're going to go for our break, and when we come back, we'll be delving in this world of what the new possibilities for WordPress are, which I'm very excited about. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. I had a great initial discussion with Uncle Spencer. So Spencer, I think we're not seeing the best days of WordPress yet. I think it's exciting. What's to come? What do you think is coming in the next few years for the whole WordPress community?
Well, let's spin this in the positive way that I would like it to be, because I know it comes off as odd, and you and I have fun. We joke about the topic, but so let's assume we start with the premise, and we'll put that baby to bed, that thus far there has been a less than ideal execution on explaining to the outside world what WordPress is. Okay, let's just say that's the case. So now we have a choice. The choice of going forward isn't about complaining about what the other side was doing. The choice is, what are we going to do about it now? And so some of the exciting developments that I myself feel are part of the secrets of the stack is, number one, let's talk about the layer of the page builders versus Gutenberg. Number two, let's talk about hosting. Number three, let's talk about the business model of like makers collaborating together in a way that is cooperative, as if they were working for one platform. Okay, so starting with the first premise, or let's just talk about it, as a mixture. When somebody comes into WordPress, it's not always clear to them what they're supposed to do, right? There's very few platforms, like you don't go to Shopify or Squarespace or Wix or Weebly, and then you first have to figure out what's the .com versus .org, or figure out, you mean hosting's not included, or you figure out like, you mean I don't get just one of each feature I have. So when you're talking about the experience for people who are coming from other competitive spaces, WordPress has so much that can be an improvement. And it means not that like we have to complain or beg them to do it, but rather we can organize ourselves as the makers into something that avoids the conflict between various plugin authors or various hosting authors. And yet at the same time, let's be honest, when you go to the store and look at Soda Pop, there's 47 different flavors of cola, right? It's not like there's just one of each. It's just they figured out where to put them on the shelf so that the buyers get what they want, and yet the other companies making it still make money. And so from the standpoint of like hosting, I undeniably feel there will always be room for more and more hosts, but like as Stephen can attribute, you're going to need to niche down or niche in or attribute it to something specifically as an end result, whereas in the past it might have been good enough to just say generic hosting, right? When it comes to plugin authors.
I just love that you mentioned Stephen, but not mine.
Well, I don't know, because Stephen and I spoke at length about Zipfish and other things. And it's not, I think, any surprise. I don't want to speak for Stephen, but like there are things that are commodities and things that also are niches. And there's enough of a community using WordPress that a company can do extremely well with a very small niche because it's a large pool of potential, right? So
I totally agree with you. Stephen, have you got a question?
Question or statement? I don't know. We'll see where this goes.
But I must be growing on you. My influence is growing on you.
I think what you're saying, Spencer, is really interesting about like how when somebody approaches WordPress, like how do they approach it, and then the confusion that obviously happens as they're getting into it. Do you think that most people are coming to WordPress from a third-party source, let's say like an LMS sort of system? Like I'm Googling LMS stuff and somebody's like, oh, LearnDash is the best. And so I go learn, I start going down that route and find out all these things about what, WordPress is and what I need to do to get it working. And like, maybe I'm Googling CRM and I like stumble across Fluent CRM? Or do you think people are starting more from I want WordPress to do X, Y, and Z, and then finding those plugins? Like somebody who just doesn't know WordPress that well, how are they getting into it? And what direction are they coming from?
We found two channels. Okay. So there's top down, bottom up. Let's start with the bottom up. Bottom up are those who come into the WordPress community who are what I would refer to mostly as tinkerers or implementers or designers who have something in the WordPress space that drew them to it. It could be a theme, it could be a plugin, it could be a feature. And in doing so, they became much like, I can speak for myself, maybe you guys, became enamored with, oh my God, this is the best Lego kit of all time. I can literally make my livelihood by becoming a specialist of doing this, that, or the other. But as a result of being exposed to the underbelly of WordPress and its granola picnic, hey man, let's trade our stuff for free, trading cards mentality, there is a mindset on the pricing that is a little distorted, right? This plugin does everything I need and my clients need for their entire 7-figure business, and you want to ask $80 for that? How dare you? Okay. Then there's the top-down crowd, which comes from like your CRMs in particular, right? I'm coming from Salesforce or Infusionsoft or one of those. Salesforce or Infusionsoft used to first of all, they're enterprise product, but Infusionsoft used to charge $2,500 just for the privilege of being able to get a demo of their product. And those days are long gone. Salesforce can still get away with it. However, we're finding a huge influx of enterprise level customers who are realizing that they spent $500,000 on Drupal and some CRM last year when they could have done that for a few $1,000s and owned and controlled on WordPress. Now, what that means to us in the maker space, there are those who will want a product that goes to the tinkerer crowd. It's like LaunchFlows would fit in that both directions, but that would fit in the price model and the lifetime deal and so forth. And that's an attractive thing because people get excited and they become fanboys. Then the top-down people could care less what is under the hood of their solution. They need the outcome. They need service level agreements. They need professional level support. And they are shocked if you don't tell them that it has 5 figures in the price. And so what I'm suggesting is each maker can make a decision whether they want to go down or up. And that's not a benefit or curse. And you'll have a larger volume, but more maybe hands-on and support versus a smaller volume, but higher income, but also more responsibility. And I feel that that's, with our research and the data we're collecting at WP-Launchify, that's proving itself out in a good way for the makers. Here's why. The same stack of plugins are working to satisfy both ends of the market, which is an extraordinary thing if you think about it, because I'm not picking on Mark Benioff. He's a billionaire. He can do whatever he wants. But Salesforce as a software on the interface or its user features and stuff is not remarkable. I mean, it's super powerful, but it's not remarkable. And they've not had to change it in many iterations because they're locking in all these enterprises. When you look at the software on WordPress, it's pretty freaking remarkable. I mean, both from the interface and the power and the fact that it runs on a tiny little LAMP server and so forth. So I think that's the most exciting thing is that like an iPhone, we've got an iPhone that does more than the whole Apollo space program computers combined, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
I want to put one final question before we wrap up the podcast, the show. You're okay for staying another 15 minutes for bonus content, Spencer?
Bonus,
right. But let's go for our final question. It's a kind of follow-through question to what you've just stated. WP-Tonic's in the e-learning area. That's where I planted my flag, e-learning. And we have SaaS competitors. We have Kajabi, Learnable, Teachable, and a host of other ones, enterprise level, education, a host of SaaS competitors. I think if WordPress goes the right way, the way that we hope, I think it's going to get increasingly hard for these SaaS competitors to compete and really have a kind of real sane business model or argument against WordPress. What do you think?
Well, I think you do bring up a good point, which is, first of all, there's always an evolution of what's popular, right? So even if a company does everything right, they could fade out of public favor, or they could just still make money and fade out of public view. For example,
can I just quickly interrupt? I apologize. Yeah. I think that in some ways, I think these SaaS in the e-learning have grown because of the weaknesses of WordPress. If those weaknesses are slightly removed, which we hope, and it improves, which looks like it can do, I think they're going to increasingly have a tough time. Sorry.
Well, I mean, if you look at how the business model is for SaaS e-learning, it's not about the interface or the features. It's really about the fact that they're going to promote and market people into a marketplace and then get audiences to that. So if you look at a Thinkific or something like that, they're really not selling you how easy or amazing it is to make your courses online. They're selling you, this is where you can make a course, dump it into here, and there will be people buying it. Right? And even if it's at a discount for many authors, that's the attractive thing about it. I'm not 100% sure whether those authors would care to go to the trouble, even as simplified as it could be, of hosting their own WordPress website for 1 or 2 courses. However, for the other kind of user, who a school or a person with many courses or a business with many courses, I do tend to agree that if it can be simplified, and again, this is where Launchify is trying to make it easier for the environment as well. We call them use cases. If you could come and see there's a use case that is literally the same or better of features and some, simplicity and ease of use, less money, and you own it, control it, and you can get it ready to go from a WordPress type of solution, why wouldn't you? Because at the end of the day, people in this membership economy are cognizant of what a membership costs. So like I was joking with a friend at lunch the other day, how we all have Hulu Plus and Disney and Netflix and Amazon Prime and all the rest, because they've lowered their prices to such an extent, you can just pay 7 here, 12 there, 15 there every month and never get off of it. But some of those SaaS platforms are not that inexpensive. So for many people, they would recognize, you know what, if I own it and control it, and I just pay, a small amount every year for the plugins, then WordPress really is something that would be useful. And for the implementers, that's the big benefit. I'm an implementer who has a niche audience of, let's say I'm into chiropractic or something. If I know what they need and how they need it, well, I'm just going to take the TV dinner of this use case, I'm going to customize it for them, and I'm going to sell them the thing with the content and all the goodies. So it's like razor blades and razors. One hand is creating a tool for the next hand, which is passing it off to the other hand. And along the way, everybody makes more money. But it has to start. And that's where the secrets are. Yeah. It has to start with a unification of what the hell is the platform and what does it contain.
Yeah, that's great. The reason why, just to wrap it up, and then we go on to bonus content, the reason why I brought this up is that I feel some of these SaaS competitors like Kajabi and to some extent Teachable, they have been very effective in their anti-WordPress propaganda, and it's been consistent anti-WordPress propaganda.
I think it's fair based upon what we're talking about today, because like even us who spend every day of our work life with WordPress, it was only 2 weeks ago that I finally said Gutenberg has reached a level of usability, and there's many people about accessibility and so on.
I want to respect what you said earlier. Maybe we can do this in the bonus content, but
it's not a criticism. It's just,
I want to keep the podcast part more upbeat. And
it is, yeah. I'm not. I don't take that as a. You don't take what I'm saying the wrong way.
No, I'm not.
I can say objectively that it's not a criticism. It's just a factual statement. I mean, nobody would argue that they're working on improving Gutenberg. That's not saying it's bad. It's just the truth. I know you're worried about the lawyers calling today.
No, at all. I was respecting the general tone of the interview. Actually, I was respecting, because you did indicate that you wanted at the first half of the show a more upbeat, more positive tone to this interview, and that's what I'm trying to
just to riff off of what Jonathan was saying earlier about Kajabi and kind of what your answer there, that like Spencer, about their marketing being like, of course Kajabi is better than WordPress in some areas. Like Kajabi is easier. I mean, I've logged in the Kajabi backend. I've helped people with Kajabi stuff. It's simpler, but can you do everything you want with it? No. So the answer is, if there's something you want to do, you just don't do it. Where WordPress is, if there's something you want to do, you can find a way to do it. And that's really where WordPress starts getting complex,
Right.
is as you start figuring those things out, you're layering in plugins and stuff.
We
And
just
so-
need to make that initial, what you just said, when you first, we just need to make that experience a bit easier.
That
we need
is the heart of it.
We
But
need
you
to
never-
wrap it. We need to wrap it up, Spencer, for the podcast part of the show. If you really want to support the show, please join us on the WP.
You want to hear how this ends?
WP Facebook group, the mastermind group. If you're making a living from WordPress, you really do want to join our Facebook group. We've got a load of experts like Spencer who admin the Facebook group. We love you to join us and join the discussion. We're also in the near future going to be producing a weekly WP-Tonic newsletter with all the latest news, plugins, recommendations, everything you would want to know if you're already in the WordPress community. We'll be starting that in the next couple of weeks. We're going to wrap up this. Please join us for the bonus content, which you'll be able to see on the whole interview plus the bonus content on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. Spencer, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
I would encourage anybody to go over and try WPLaunchify.com's free discovery tool, which will reveal some things that are personal choices about what a stack might look like for their need, for their use case. You can check out LaunchFlows.com if you want. That's the plugin that amplifies WooCommerce's behavior. But Launchify is really where I think this conversation is about. So that would be a good place. And you can always reach out to me at help@WPLaunchify.com.
That's great. And Stephen, how can people find out more about you and your company?
Head over to zipfish.io, run a speed test, see how much faster your website could be.
That's great. We'll see you next week with another great interview, another great WordPress or marketing discussion. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
That's what is that? That's the cliffhanger.
Stop bloody arguing with me.
Mid-sentence?
Wait, I call dibs on first thing.
You
on
talk.
bonus content.
Mid-sentence. Who cuts off a
Mid-sentence.
mid-sentence? Who does that?
And
I
Jonathan
do.
wonders why I needed a break.
I do. I do, because I need to sometimes.
What are you paying by the minute for a Facebook video hosting or something? What the hell?
No, I like to keep it to 30 minutes. All right. Yeah, like I say, so how do you, in a year's time, we're at the beginning of August. Next August, what do you think are some of the things that we're going to see? Because I think if you ask more than a year out, it's really impossible. But you do have, a year out, you can sense some of how things are going. What do you see on the landscape for the next year, really?
I'll answer that question, but I want Stephen to ask his question because he was.
Yeah, no. All I wanted to say was that I think that what you said, Jonathan, about like making the setups experience or make all these plugins work better together. Like, sure, that'll make it easier. It'll never be as easy as Kajabi because Kajabi has features that they just lock down. You cannot have.
Correct.
But
a limited set of them.
Oh,
right.
WordPress
always has to allow people to do whatever they want. Right. That's a core aspect of WordPress. You can always add a plugin. You can create your own custom code. You can find somebody else that has a plugin. And that's why we all love it. So we can never keep it as easy, but we can add the features maybe so it becomes more easy, but it will never be as easy as Kajabi is.
I fundamentally disagree with you, Stephen, and this is the reason. Because that's what we do at WP-Tonic, Stephen. It depends where they're coming from, but if they're a new user, we don't give them admin rights, only if they really, really request it, and then we set it up so they don't have to deal with what you've just stated. So it really depends on the service provider, Stephen. So that's, I think, the exciting part of it.
You guys are offloading the complexity to your plate, right? Like your client doesn't have to deal with the complexity, but WP-Tonic has the ones that have to deal with the complexity of it.
And
It's
what,
not
the client doesn't care who has to
He
deal
does-
with
I think
We're
Stephen's
dealing
point is-
it for the client. So
I think you both have a version of the right thing, but you're cross purposes. Stephen's point, I agree with wholeheartedly, and I'll start with that. My experience, even going back to 2006 with the Silicon Valley, $100 million venture-backed Ning, okay? They had 12, 15,000 customers on a freemium platform and couldn't figure out how to get people to give them money. They made it possible for jokers like me and my partner to come in and make a bunch of tchotchkes and start selling them. And we had 12 to 15,000 people every day buying every single crazy little regurgitated toy we made. It was like the hot dogs and beer for the football stadium. They forgot the hot dogs and beer, and everybody was sitting in the stadium like wondering why it wasn't as much fun. Well, in the same way, the platforms get it right because they give you a limited set of stuff. So if you're a person with no knowledge and you're in a hurry, you can very quickly just go dump some content into Shopify or Squarespace or Wix or Weebly and be done with it. But that's not the attitude of WordPress. And I agree with what Jonathan's saying, but you have to think of it differently. WordPress is either tinkerers who love there's 265,000 plugins. And yes, I can hire a John Denwood or WP-Tonic, but that's not the point. I'm going to go in there and beat my head against this rock for a year, trying to figure it out myself. And then when I'm frustrated, I'll either hire John or I'll move.
No, but there's another part of this. Through our onboarding, and at the present moment, I do the onboarding. I ask them a series of questions to judge. Are they tinkerers? If they tinkers, we say we can set it up like this, and go ahead. And we tell them.
Tinkerers don't become buyers until they've beaten their head against a rock for enough time. That's my opinion. My experience over literally 15 years now is that the people who are willing to buy plugins. Well, there's a new category, by the way, the LTD category, who they just collect it, like literally cryptocurrency and NFT. They don't use it, they just collect it. I swear to God. But other than those people, the people who will buy services from an implementer have first gone through the pain of the shiny ball or the Frankenstein, or the high-end top-down people. That's what's so exciting to me about that niche in the market. They realize that, like, our competitor now spend $2,500 instead of $500,000, and they're in WordPress and they own it and control it. Can I call that WP-Tonic guy or something to help me out? But they're not going to be the ones tinkering. There's absolutely no enterprise people tinkering, and there's absolutely no newbies that are tinkering that are going to go buy your services without first hurting themselves. And that's the fascinating thing about it, where the SaaS model works because it offers immediate gratification, very little risk. It's 1 month. And you don't even Russell Brunson, it's $300. Okay, I spend $300. If I don't like it, I turn it off. But they also make a deal with the devil, because when you lock your business into the cage, the gilded cage of a SaaS platform, there's nowhere to take it to. Once you've built a really big business on ClickFunnels, and Russell knows that, you can't go and move it to another platform. But here's the promise of WordPress. You build an amazing business with Jonathan's help or on your own, and guess what? You can keep owning it and moving it and owning it, moving it, and so forth.
You get fed up with my English sarcasm and my charm.
I'm not saying you're sarcastic. I'm saying you're right.
I'm only kidding. But if
I'm not offended. I'm just saying it's correct.
If you get fed up with me and my company, you can go off somewhere else, can't you?
Yeah, you mean in the sense of a customer. Well, that's the thing that we actually use as a selling point. Okay, so for years I've taught relationships are the same in business or in personal life, right? So the best relationships in life are not the one where you hold your friend or your lover hostage. They're the ones where they want to be with you. And in the same way, if your customer does not want to be with you, then there's really no point in putting in all these lock you into my gilded cage things.
I'm honestly trying to provide a service where it's a non-brainer if you're the right fit for WP-Tonic. And yeah. I think I'm doing a really good job now, because I have a host of people that come to us and say, my God, I've been looking for this. I can't believe that if only I knew about you 3 months ago, and they just sign up straight away. And they are happy bunnies with us, Spencer.
But that is but hold on, that is exactly my whole point. When we say the secret of the stack, okay? You thankfully are, or both of you guys, I would say, but you specifically, Jonathan, with regard to your business, have followed some of the suggestions and adopted the concept of a smaller, limited, unified stack of plugins all in their own lane. And so now when you offer things to people, you are not having to accommodate their crazy build outs from the past. And you're not having to accommodate their crazy requests, because you tell them, like a good platform should, here's the features you need, take these. And that's actually what people want. When you go into the pharmacy, sure, there's a million drugs you could take off the shelf, but most people go to the pharmacist and say, can you please tell me what to take for my tummy ache or my headache or whatever? And they appreciate when they're told, oh, this is exactly what you want to take 3 times a day. And I think that's what WordPress has been missing. And that's where the efforts of my business with WP-Launchify lie, is as a public service that benefits not only the newcomers to WordPress, but also the existing people as well as the makers. And in a weird way, being benevolent ourselves, I think we ultimately benefit Automatic, because there will be a set of people who will appreciate, man, that Jetpack plugin does everything I need in one fell swoop. Okay, cool. Now at least you understand that, instead of banging your head against the wall.
Yeah. I'm going to state the obvious, and I've stated this before to you. But well, let's Stephen ask a question, Jonathan. Go on, Stephen, off you go.
I'm wondering what the obvious is.
Sorry,
but the obvious that you were going to state.
What was your obvious?
Well, the thing is, with what you're trying to do, partly with WP-Launchify, you know, when you make these recommendations, I'm going to state the obvious. You know, you've built it out and you've made it more sophisticated, so it has multiple choices depending on what you call scenarios. You know, use cases. That's
right.
your and you give various recommendations, but you're still going to peeve off the plugin producers that aren't on that recommended list.
Well,
they're still going to send poison arrows your way.
It doesn't work that way.
They're still going to say why we're not on that list.
He's
it's the first thing they're going to say, isn't it?
You're like that British interviewer, Pierce, whatever, who used to like try to poke fun at the Queen and get her to respond. You keep misrepresenting slightly, I think, what we actually do and what the purpose is. So let me be clear about it, all right? WP-Launchify itself starts with the free discovery tool, but it is not exclusive in any way, shape, or form. The other thing that I've described is it's in release, but it's also in the early days, because one of the things, sort of like any marketplace, of building a chicken and the egg scenario is you have to start with what you know and the products that exist. And so certainly, of course, in order to make the content, we're going to start by putting in content and recommendations for things that we've already proven, used, can stand by. I mean, I put my personal reputation on. I can say this is exactly what the unique reason this thing has to be. Now, let's talk about where we're going. One of the things my goal includes for this year is this association. I don't have the details on it, but the notion of being able to gather anybody who has a plugin or a participation in the theme space, whatever, of WordPress, to be a member of an association. Now, this is not a member of my personal country club or pay Spencer, you can't get in, not the least. It's more of a, like NATO was created to counterbalance the Soviet Union. You need a counterbalance where the people who have something new and innovative can be heard, can meet the right people, can share their ideas and collaborate, because I'm a big mouth, I'm a nosy body. I met each of you that way, like, hey, Stephen, tell me about everything about you. Oh, John, like I get to do that because I'm that kind of person. But there's a lot of people who are super talented making cool software that aren't comfortable calling up strangers or don't have the right connections. And so one of the things that LaunchFlows has as its primary purpose is to build that membership of a community of makers, not to exclude people, because that's not of any, I'm not charging people to get in LaunchFlows, but rather to make it that we can figure out, hold on, Bob and Susie and Steve, you guys are all working on the same kind of, you guys need to get together and collaborate and make something that works together.
I just want to put this to you. I followed everything you've just said and I totally understand it, but I've still got to put this to you in my English interview hack. That, you know, it's just like membership plugins. I actually can't list all the membership plugins that there are out there.
Right.
Look at page builders. Look at the insane back and forth conversation that you had with the Oxygen crowd and the rabiness that they showed towards you initially when you just made the most obvious statement about something, the response. And, by just, you can't list through your recommendation all the membership bloody plugins out there because it would become an irrelevance. You can't list all the page building.
It can work.
By the essence of what you're doing, you're going to peeve off people.
No, here's how that works. Okay. So if you look at any good association, right, there are committees, there are groups, there are ways of segmenting people, much like in marketing automation, right? So let's say we're talking about the page builder thing that we were just having before, and my own mea culpa about using Gutenberg and short codes and blocks versus, let's say, Elementor, which has been my primary favorite. It's very easy to understand there is existing communities, people in the tens or hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, that divide up the larger segment of WordPress. So when you look at how the recommendation engine would work, as well as how the membership of the makers would work, you will have subcommittees or committees that would allow organization, collaboration, marketing, and other recommendations based upon somebody filtering for themselves. I am a lover of Divi. Tell me everything that works with Divi. And then the recommendations that follow are a subset of Divi related things. You see, somebody doesn't have to come in at the parent level and get one thing for every single use case. But of course, you're being unfair if you think that somehow I can pull this out of my ass in one day and like this entire WordPress ecosystem is organized perfectly. We're building out, starting to do the next level of it. And as I go, the things that are interesting to me are how the technology is evolving. For example, 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 3 months ago, I would not have given, let's say, the block editor the time of day. Now I see that door is wide open and that everybody else is rushing through it, which affects how I teach people, how I recommend things, and so forth. But I'm not the gatekeeper. The ultimate thing here is by bringing in this community, and even if it is a membership or paid membership kind of a thing, it doesn't matter because nobody else is doing it thus far. I mean, think about how long WordPress has been here.
Yeah, can I be
16 years.
I've taken everything in. What you're offering is curation, and I totally understand it.
I'm offering a space for the makers to collaborate and have a platform that makes sense for the end users.
But you're also offering curation. And the problem with that...
That's what a platform does. If you go to Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, they don't give you 100 different options randomly to choose from. They go, here's the way to do this. Yeah, and isn't that what we need in WordPress?
But that's not WordPress. But what I'm saying...
That's what it should be. That's my point.
Well, that's what I'm just about hoping to point out to you is this is why WordPress.org, this is why they won't do what you're suggesting, because fundamentally, when you go and look for a plugin or you look for a recommendation of theme, it's a mess. But that's why they won't touch it with a barge pole, because they know if they start to effectively curate it in any form of really effective way, that they are just going to get arrows sent to them left, right, and center, because people are going to say, why don't you recommend my plugin? Why aren't you recommending my theme? And that's why they won't do it. For all the things that you've tried to argue with me, Spencer, you don't fundamentally answer the problem by curation, which is great.
Because all
the things that you've said, you're still going to end up excluding people. That is the part of curation.
No, because you keep misrepresenting it as a curation engine. WP-Launchify is not a curation engine. It never was. It never will be. It is a way for somebody to understand, using the term, like we said, the secrets of WordPress, that if you have a scenario where you have a use case, I need to solve something. Currently, with the ability for me to add content as much as I can, here's a way to solve it. Use this, 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 and this. That is not curating it by saying that's the only way to do it. And in fact, even now, we recommend or show, here's all the things in that space that we've added to the database. But it's not exclusionary. And that's not curation. Curation is what you do when you have a client. You say, you tell me what you need, and here's your answer. I'm not deciding for anybody whether to pay attention to this or that plugin. What I am saying, though, is that the problem of what Automatic doesn't do, I disagree maybe their motive. I think Automatic doesn't curate or give one answer, because not only will it alienate people, but it's against their financial interests with Jetpack. That's the reason. And that makes sense.
You would say that it's like a Capterra of sorts, right? Like Capterra doesn't have an opinion. It's just trying to help you find the best thing for your very specific use case. And you can compare softwares.
Like G2, if you go to G2, have you ever been to G2?
Yeah.
They're not curating for anybody. They're listing everything they possibly can. And even people can give their comments. I don't want to have people give comments because it's irrelevant. But the point is, if WP-Launchify was looked at like your question, in a year from now, WP-Launchify will have every reasonable author's content or plugin in there. Here's why. Because my ultimate goal is to have the authors financially participate. If you have a software that you're selling, not giving away, you owe it to yourself to collaborate with the other makers that would be interacting in your space. Because in doing that as an author, just like OPEC or something, we can coordinate our efforts so that we're not competing with the same customer in the same use case, but can dovetail our efforts into something where we both take the customer that best suits us, or that we make a product that works with somebody else's versus banging against each other. And by putting the search engine in, the discovery engine, I just laid the foundation for the next level. The next level is the association, so I can invite every maker in. Just like G2, there's like literally nobody's, oh, you can't be in G2. Well, does it cost to be in G2? Yeah, of course it costs something, but like the cost to you is a fraction of what you get back for all the benefits. That's what it's doing. So, please, I mean, I know you're poking fun at some things, but you keep saying that it's curation.
I generally, I will consider what you've just said and what Stephen says, and I will think about it, but okay. I'm just pointing. I'm not being difficult. I am pointing out something which I just don't think you're prepared to look at and think about the consequences of curation. But that's
would you not say curation? Because you keep saying it's curation. It's not curation. Curation is when you pick something. There will be no picking of things, nor is there now. I'm not saying Jonathan is the only one you can go to, or Stephen is the. That's not happening now. It's not going to happen. It's a discovery tool. Like when you go to Google, yes, it is true. You can pay Google to get listed at the top in an ad that's supposed to be clearly listed as an ad. But if you're popular, you will be discovered on the front page of Google using SEO. That is a discovery tool. We're not doing search engine stuff, but the metaphor holds up. Okay.
Yeah, we need to write. Spencer's just experienced the English way.
I have to ask one question before we wrap up, because this is the most pro.
I've known John for 15 years. This is hardly the best of Jonathan's English stuff. Lightweight English, Jonathan.
This is the most pro I've ever heard you, Spencer, on the block editor. And it's been a long time since we talked. And so I just need to know that for just general site, somebody asks Spencer, hey, what page builder should I use? Have you changed your recommendation to the block editor?
And you know what? Like I said, all props, maybe to you as well, but certainly to Sally Getch, right? Who was always pro block editor. The tipping point for me was when I realized that the block editor, when used with things like Editor Plus, right, has enabled the same kind of simplicity that otherwise is available in what was and still is my go-to, which is Elementor, right? However, it's undeniable to me, especially now because we're doing some really cool stuff with like content that works in the shell of other page builders, that by sticking to the default editor, you eliminate an entire layer, right? It's undeniable that if you can make cool stuff, save it, share it, have patterns, have, in the native editor, that is going to be the fastest, cheapest, easiest, more shareable way of doing it. And so I would say to people, use Elementor for the specialty things that it still can do, even the free one. For example, there are a lot of things with dynamic content in Elementor that are really incredible. But I will also say that those same developers are coming up fast as the block editor matures. And in the meantime, I'm aiming for where it's going. instead of where it is. And so here's my prediction. Jonathan's question remains unanswered. In the next year, what I see happening in the WordPress space is, number one, I think you'll see a shakeout of the page builder community. I think Gutenberg will reach the point where it is mainstream so that people who come into the WordPress space on their own or with the help of someone will immediately be able to just drop in whatever they decide to call it. I mean, if they call it like a block or a section, or they call it a pattern or a template, but they'll just be able to go, oh, there's a feature in WordPress that has pretty elements that I move. And second of all, in that shakeout, I think you'll see that some of the esoteric page builders, they will implode like Oxygen. You're already seeing Oxygen imploding, and I'm not picking on them, but their own community is freaked out, pissed off because the back end thing takes 800 million years to load. And they're asking when they're going to get to version 4.0. And the authors, I think, realize, like the Brizzy authors, oh, we got a real shit show on our hands. So I think you'll see less page builders. You'll see definitely Divi and Elementor for sure, but Gutenberg will be the go-to. And then the rest of the community, what I hope to see is that I hope Launchify as a discovery tool and as an organization/association will have the participation where we can offer a safe haven, protected from fear of retribution or anything, where you can build products, find relationships, do things to make WordPress real easy to understand. If you dropped in from space and you had $10,000 to spend, you'd immediately understand what you need to do, much as you do on any other SaaS, but now you'll own it and control it.
All right, and we're going to wrap it up. It's always a pleasure having you for the interviews, Spencer. It's always
You'll regret those words, Jonathan, I'm sure you will.
No, I don't, actually. It's always an interesting discussion. We'll be back next week with another great discussion about WordPress and marketing. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.